And hello, everybody. I'm Glenn Crooks, Matty Lawrence here. Chris Sakonis with us later on. And also, we're hoping for a guest appearance from Tony Miola. He does the Chicago Fire commentary. Colleagues with Tony on Sirius XMFC, Jersey boy, so that's a part colleague as well. Not for Matty, but for me, as we're here at Citi Field, New York City FC playing host to the Chicago Fire. So we've got all kinds of special things for you here in the next 20 minutes or so. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't look at the global game a little bit before we started. And I just tweeted out a picture. Sal Rosabilia, who's a match director here today. He's been on the broadcast before. He's a Milan supporter. And Matty Lawrence, as you all know, if you follow us at all, is a Liverpool guy. And, they had different sort of emotions today. Milan winning Serie A. And this incredibly dramatic, emotional, tense. I'm listening to Talk Sport on the way in on our FC 157 channel. And I don't know if there's anybody better than John Anderson as far as a radio play-by-play guy. We love Tom Rennie, but this guy, he painted the picture, provided the emotion. He was doing the Man City match. Man City goes down 2-0 in their game against Aston Villa. So what do? They score 3 goals in 5 minutes in the second half. They win 3-2 and win the title, while Liverpool is getting the job done at Anfield. So what was it like for you today, Matty? Just if you could encapsulate. It was, and then I want to get to the to Leeds for a moment, too, before we kick into things.
The minute Man City scored the third, I left my house. I didn't see the 2 Liverpool goals, the second and third goals they scored, because there was no point, because they'd already lost, because the minute City were 3-2 up, that was the end of the game. Villa were probably a little bit lucky to have scored there too. They had something like, 18% possession at time, 24% possession, I think, overall, something like that. So, it was made to be interesting by Aston Villa somehow fluking going 2-0 up. But then, look, Man City are champions for a reason. And even being a Liverpool fan, I can fully appreciate Man City, the quality of their play. And the fact that over 38 games, they've been the best team in England. They deserve to win the title by having more points and scoring more goals than any other team, I think, in the division.
If there's a credit to Pep, first of all, for Pep himself individually, that's 10 league championships in the last 13 years with 3 clubs. Yeah. So if someone wants to talk about Pep and Champions League, can't win it without Messi, I have no time for you. This guy's a brilliant manager, and I think that's proof of it. But who does he substitute late? Ilkay Gundogan, in the second half. He had Jack Grealish on the bench, and he chose Gundogan.
Yep.
And Gundogan comes in with 2. I don't think it was a Kun Aguero moment. He's not going to get a statue, erected, in front of the Etihad like Kun Aguero. Big celebration last weekend. But it was quite a finish.
Yeah, it was. Look, it was a great finish for the league as a whole. And as you say, we're going to talk a little bit about the relegation as well. But certainly the fact that the league goes down to the final day. And I know Man City have now won 4 out of the last 5, but it's not a Bayern Munich moment. It's not a PSG moment where the teams have won the league by Christmas virtually. It went all the way down to the wire. And look, I think Man City deserved to win it, and I never thought for 1 second that they wouldn't beat Aston Villa. I think even at 2-0, I thought Manchester City would still win because they're that dominant. They proved it against West Ham last week, coming from behind, and they've done it again today. They've just got a tremendous self-belief in that dressing room, which starts from the top, starts with Guardiola himself. But the players, I think, have to be credited with that will to win, the desire to keep winning, and that self-belief as well. At 2-0 down, not to let your heads drop. It's pretty immense to come back and win 3-2 in such a short space of time.
And it's 4 titles now in 5 years. Then there was Leeds United. So with Jesse Marsch, an American, coaching them, so that's been the big story. Story replacing Bielsa, that legendary figure. And then from a New York City FC perspective, a guy who has spent some time here, was a favorite of Patrick Vieira's and developed under Patrick, Jack Harrison. So Jack Harrison scores the clinching goal in a 2-1 victory to save Leeds from relegation. And, the irony, it runs pretty deep here. You've got Jesse Marsch, who made his mark as a coach initially with the New York Red Bulls here in MLS, with strict rivals New York City FC featuring Jack Harrison along the way. So they've played each other in this Hudson River Derby. and for them to do it together, well, I think it's rather poetic.
Absolutely, and it's tremendous for me, for American coaches, because they've had a bad rap back in England, and it's wonderful that Jesse Marsch has kept them up. It really is. I think that will maybe not quite work wonders, but it certainly will benefit, I think, US coaches in the long run. Players have been there and done it back in England. A number of coaches for probably over 2-3 decades now. That's never been in doubt, but the coaching has certainly been in doubt, and there's been a little bit of ridicule for the likes of Bob Bradley. Chris Armas is getting ridiculed a little bit at Manchester United as well. So for me, it's fantastic to see Jesse Marsch. I'm not sure that we can call it success, but certainly it's a very good story. And the fact that they haven't got relegated, I suppose you could just about call it success. It's not success because you've only just avoided relegation, but it's
more
tremendous.
Success than Everton, who just had a pitiful season, have overspent. We could spend a long time on that, but we won't, because we want to maybe introduce things going on in another league. Now, Serie A. I don't know. Is Tony there? We can see Tony.
He's there, all right.
But we can, you've got to unmute yourself, man. All right, Miola, listen,
I got you.
He's the only guy I know. He's kind of like my hero because of this. That has an AOL account still. He's still AOL.com. So when you take that into consideration, Tony, you are my hero. But hey, so Milan, we were talking about Liverpool.
I heard. I was waiting. I was waiting to get the Serie A with you, Glenn. I thought you weren't going there, but I'm going to go there. Milan are champions of Serie A.
For the first time in, what is it, 10, 11? What is it? I don't know.
12.
12 years. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I shortchanged it. So tell us about your experience watching it. You had a big Italian dinner and the whole thing?
As a matter of fact, I did. Soccer in this area might know Jack Ada and Sal Rosamilia. Jack Ada, I was at his parents' house. His dad, a staunch Inter Milan fan, which made it even more fun. Jack is a lifelong Juventus fan, which made it even better. So I had a really good day with nice pasta dinner, some meats, and a Scudetto championship. How about that?
Well, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations. And I know that sometimes you look at it, it's a long time coming. All I know is on the American football side, I'm a New York Jets fan. So anyone that cries, it's been too long, I don't have no sympathy at all. All right. Well, Miola, National Soccer Hall of Famer, goalkeeper. So we're going to focus on the goalkeeping here a little bit. When you look at these two teams and you look at Gaga Slonina, an 18-year-old, he just turned 18 a couple of days ago, in goal for Chicago. And then you've got a 32-year-old Sean Johnson in goal for New York City FC. So, Tony and Matt, I want you to hear this from Greg Berhalter. It's one of the first things he addressed when he had his media presser the other day after the roster was announced for this June window, these two friendlies and these Nations League matches. So he talks about Slonina first and then Johnson.
In the goalkeeper position, we got some great news today that Gaga has committed to the United States. We see a very promising future for him with the U.S. men's national team, and excited to have him committing to us. In terms of his current form, it was hard to put him on the roster due to his current form. And I explained that to him and had a good conversation, but again, excited to have him. I think the danger was, and this is just an honest conversation I had with him, I said, listen, I can't bring you into this camp because of your form. I just can't do it. We have guys at really high levels and experienced guys that played for us before, and your form hasn't been good enough. And I can understand if you're going to go take a look at Poland because you're disappointed with this. And, it was, and his response, was great. It was, he understands where he's at. He's going to work to get out of where he's at, but he said he's still committed to us. And that's all, that's all you can hear. You make relationships with players, you welcome players with the group, guys make them feel welcome, and you hope that's enough that in the end of the day they decide. But in Gaga's case also, his heart was telling him where to go, and that's a really important part of the equation. And then finally, Sean Johnson, he's been around for almost every camp that we've had so far. He's in pretty good form with New York City. He's in good form with New York City. But, we wanted to use this opportunity to take a look at Zach, Matt, and then Ethan, who will be coming off, hopefully, a promotion to the Premier League. I had some really tough conversations. I had a difficult conversation with Sean Johnson. James Sands, was a difficult conversation. Mark McKenzie, they're not easy conversations to have. They're really not. And, all I can say is, I understand where the guys are at. I feel for them. And again, this camp isn't determining who's on the team. We're going to have much harder conversations in after September.
All right, Tony Meola. Let's take Sean Johnson first and then move our way to Slonina. And then Ezra Hendrickson has a comment as well through a clip from his presser this week. But what about Sean Johnson? My understanding is that he was beyond disappointed not to be selected. Angry might not be the correct word either, but really unhappy. And you can't blame him, I suppose. What do you think?
Well, first off, if you were anything but disappointed, this is the wrong business for you, right? You should be disappointed. You're not getting called to the national team. I would imagine that if I were Sean Johnson, I would envision myself as one of the 3 goalkeepers getting on a flight to go to Qatar and doing everything that I can to be one of those guys, because the assumption is that 2 guys in Zach Steffen and Matt Turner are going to Qatar, assuming we don't have any injuries, right? So I can understand him being upset. And if he was mad, what's wrong with being mad? Now that for all of these guys, Glenn, is how does it fuel you, right? How does it fuel you? I didn't make the 1998 roster, and I thought I should have been part of the 1998 group. It fueled me to a point that 4 years later, which was actually 8 years after the last World Cup I was in, I went to a World Cup again, which is pretty unusual when you think about it. You miss one, not to injury, and then go to another one. So it's a matter of what you do from here. You're not going to camp, but keep yourself ready, keep playing well. It's a position that's really unsteady right now. We're kind of juggling balls right now in the goalkeeping position. And I know for most people between 2, but Qatar is a long ways away right now. So yeah, of course you're upset, but you got to move on and you got to play well.
All right. Well, the guy on the other side today, Slonina. I mean, Matty and I did the broadcast. I think you did too on the Chicago side of the 0-0 draw last August, which was the debut of Slonina as a 17-year-old. He got the shutout, the clean sheet, but it was sort of like Sean Johnson's last 2 clean sheets. No shots on target, so he didn't really have to come up with much. But what is your assessment of Slonina? And then we'll get to maybe some of his difficult moments recently.
Yeah, so the assessment has been the same since the day I saw him that night. And I had seen him a little bit in training prior to that, and I've heard all about him. He's got all the tools, right? He's got everything. He's got size. He's a very good shot stopper. I think that's probably that's where he's kind of plus. It's just straight shot stopping. He's very, very good. But I've said since that night, and part of not giving up shots on goal, sometimes you got to give the goalkeeper a little bit of credit as well for organizing things in front of you.
All right, you goalkeeper.
Right. So, but he's got all the tools. And I said a while back, he reminds me, because I trained with Gigi Buffon when Gigi Buffon was at Parma when he was, I believe, 18 years old. He may have been 19 at the time. He reminds me of him in body. To compare those 2 guys would be really, really unfair, right? For both of them, it would be unfair.
Yeah.
But he's got that style of goalkeeping. Now he's gone through a rough spell, and over the last 3 or 4 games where it's looked a little bit shaky at times. Some people seem to think it's this whole Poland, U.S. He's made the choice to play for the U.S. That's where his allegiance lies, and hopefully he can get past all of that. But he's got tools, but we have to live through all of the mistakes. Matty knows when you come in, it doesn't matter. Your first year, you'll have good games, but you're making mistakes every day, right? Every day in training, and that's where you're learning. You're learning your range. You're learning what you can do, what you can't do, how much you can risk here, and until you go through all of those things, we can sit here. I can have conversation with him, and Aiden Brown, the goalkeeper coach, I'm sure has conversations every day and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like. But it's like when you have your first kid, right? Everybody tells you what it's like to have your first kid. But when you have your first kid, you're like, oh, man, nobody told me all of this, and that's really what he's going through right now.
Tony, at which point does he get removed from the firing line? He's made a couple of high-profile errors, obviously, and as you say, but young players are going to make those mistakes. We know that. But at some point, do the mistakes become too many? Do you put a number on the mistakes? When do you think it's better for him psychologically to be removed from the first team, or do you just let him try and play his way through it?
Okay, so I don't think you take him out. We're not close to taking him out, right? Because prior to those mistakes, you saw some really good performances. Yep. Keep in mind, from a fire standpoint, if you just say today was your day, right? Spencer Ritchie is still unavailable. Chris Brady is another 18-year-old that everybody is high on in Chicago. Everybody through the academy system is really, really high on. You'd be putting in another 18-year-old in goal.
Sure.
And baptism by fire once again, which sometimes is not a bad thing. But I think we're far from if things become habitual,
yes,
then of course you have to make a move. These are correctable mistakes that he's made. I think he certainly learned from the one with his feet against FC Cincinnati 2 games ago, where in those moments sometimes it's not doesn't have to be pretty, right? We got to put the ball in the stands if we have to. Those are learning moments. The one with the catch the other day, that's a technical thing. Hopefully that stuff doesn't happen. But yeah, I think you live. He's got so many tools. I think you just live with it right now.
All right, I'm going to let you lay low on the goal that he allowed against the Red Bulls. I mean, that was Howler ×2.
No doubt. Look, for a goalkeeper from Glenn, we don't have to lay low. I mean, it's no secret, right? You just go on MLSsoccer.com and go look it up, and it's not good. And here's the other thing. It comes a minute after you just take the lead on the road, right?
Right.
A minute after. So those moments you have to be better in if you're going to be successful.
And that Chris Brady kid, he just signed a 5-year contract, so that gives you an idea of how
I hear he's good, man. I hear he's good.
All right, here's Ezra Hendrickson on Slonina and this most recent game, the 3-3 draw with the Red Bulls, a late goal by Klimala to equalize. But here's Ezra.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's an 18-year-old kid. He's a bit inexperienced, but he's a mentally tough kid. And he's made a couple mistakes now in the past couple games, but he's still our number one. As far as what we need to do, we just need to, put our arms around him, let him know that we're still confident in him, because, he's our goalkeeper, and he's a very good goalkeeper at that. It's just, sometimes, players go through situations like this, and he's just got to, find his way out of it, and especially in that position, you got to be able to forget the last game and move on.
Or the last moment, right, Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the challenge, right? I mean, it's an unforgiving position. He's a young kid. He feels he let the team down in 2 games in a row. Now you got to go. You got this game and another game on the road coming up against Toronto. Difficult places to play. You got to put that out of your mind. I always say, people ask me, what's the best game you played in the World Cup? I get that question all the time. It comes in a game where I gave up my poorest goal at the near post of Romania. And I'm in the World Cup at the world stage, and we go down 1-0, and it was the best game I played after that. And I'm prouder of that moment in my career because I was able to now turn the switch off of what happened. And I learned from Bora back then. He used to say all the time, what's the most important play? And everyone used to go crazy. And he said, the next play is the most important play. And that's what he's got to go through right now. And I think he'll be fine.
All right. Tony Meola, commentator on the TV side for the Chicago Fire, also host of Counterattack on Sirius XMFC. I don't know if you noticed, Tony, but you and I are co-hosting next Thursday. Check your schedule.
Oh, really?
So you better bring your A game.
No Matty Lawrence this week? I got no Matty Lawrence this week?
Monday and Friday, Tony. Monday and Friday we're together.
Okay, you just take your Milan notes. Make sure you're prepared for
Milan.
I know. That's all
I know Monday's all Milan, Tony.
My biggest request is that please be a Jersey boy on Thursday. Let's not talk about Florida at all right?
Yeah, you got it. All right, guys.
All right. Tony, have a
Love
great
you,
one.
Boys. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Have a good one. Tony Meola, Hall of Fame goalkeeper. What an amazing career as a player. Has also coached, helped with the U20s, coached at Jacksonville, and with us here on NYCFC Pregame Live. I'm Glenn Crooks, Matty Lawrence here with you. We've got the live commentary coming up at 4:45 with the pregame show with Ronnie Dyler, presented by Nissan. So let's go back, Matty. If I'd like to just review the last game.
Sure.
Because, Alexander Collins, I'm such a big admirer of Collins. I guess always have been, but my goodness, you talk about a big time player, and we get to see him game in and game out. So New York City beats DC United 2-0 down in the nation's capital, and here was the opening goal. Headed it out for the first corner of the game, taken by Santi Rodriguez. He'll play it back to Gloucester, spins it into the front post. Here's a shot and a goal, and it's Alexander Collins. Collins loves to get forward, is always there off the set pieces. So a rehearsed play from New York City FC. Rodriguez playing short to Gloucester. He spun in a beautiful cross and flashing to the front post. Collins, and New York City takes the early lead just 6 minutes in at Audi Field.
Yeah, it was a good goal. We're taking advantage of them standing with one guy high, and we can be smart in that situation and play Chris and hit a cross from a better position than a corner, and then if you leave Kayans free in the 5 meters, then it's definitely a goal. So a good one.
All right. Good analysis from Anton Tinnerholm. So from an English accent to a Swedish accent, we're back to English today. And Tinnerholm was fantastic on Wednesday, but just the way, especially set pieces, there were different parts of the game where he knew what was coming.
Yes,
and he would let us all know, and it was kind of cool to have that. But listen to this and then comment, Maddie. This was at some point during the game. I asked him about Collins. He's played with Collins for 5 years.
He's so good. He's like a different player now compared to when I arrived to the club. He's so experienced, and you know when to go and when to stop, and how strong he is. It's like impossible to win a 1v1 duel against him. I've tried in training, but he's one of a kind, and he's a beast in the gym as well. So hopefully they're gonna go to the World Cup now, and he can show himself on the big stage, because he's a top player, and for me the best player, except Tati maybe last year, but he's definitely having a bright future as well.
Anton Tinnerholm on Alexander Collins. Tati Castellanos, by the way, yellow card accumulation, not available, suspended for this one against the Fire. But you played a lot of games at center defense in your professional career, Maddie, and when you hear Anton talk about him, and you can see almost in revering terms.
Yep, absolutely. A huge admirer. It's certainly everybody's your teammate, but you know who the good players are as well. I'm not saying that anybody's a bad player. I'm just saying you know who, as he called it, a top player. And Collins is definitely that. And I totally agree with him in the improvement as well. And that improvement comes with age and experience, especially as a centre-half. They always say a centre-half peaks between sort of 28 and 33. And Collins is pretty much bang in that, isn't he? What is he, 29, 30 years of age? Yep. So, he's perfect. And not only has he learned through playing, obviously, for NYCFC and in MLS, but also more so it's playing with Peru. And he's really cemented his position in the starting lineup of that Peru side as well. And when you play in the CONMEBOL and you're playing against Brazil and Uruguay and Argentina, you're all of a sudden coming up against the best players in the world, and every week it's Messi or it's Neymar or it's Cavani or it's Suarez. You're playing and you're marking the best players in the world, those guys who play for, whether it be Atletico Madrid or whether it be for PSG. If he can do that, with all due respect to Chicago Fire, he can handle playing against Chicago Fire when he comes back. And I think that's where we've seen him grow. His abilities have elevated. And I think a lot of that is experience and the way he reads the game as well. Of course, he's got all the attributes, but as I always say, the first few yards are in your head. And Alexander Collins is a very smart footballer as well.
So he's had an interesting national team career with Peru. And I think these statistics really just put a nice glow on how he's improved as a player. But he's been called in for years.
Yes.
But in the first 42 matches with Peru, where he was in camp and part of the potential selection, he did not play the first 42 matches. Then he played 90 minutes on June 15th, 2019, 2-0 win at El Salvador, and then played a couple of minutes in the next game, a cameo. Then sat out another 19 matches. But then he's now played in 18 straight, and that started in a 90-minute appearance with a 2-1 win over Colombia in June of 2021 in Copa America, and now they can't take him off the field.
Well, look, that's his dedication to the cause as well, isn't it? There's a lot of people who would have been in that many camps and maybe not quite given up, but certainly would have started questioning themselves. Should I be travelling doing all of this travelling to not be in camp, to not dress, to not play? Should I be concentrating on my, the team, NYCFC, rather than national team football? But I think he's seen what it takes to be a leader, to be a winner, and to be a national team player as well. It's taken him a number of years maybe for the penny to drop, to really realise exactly what it takes to work his way into that starting lineup. As you say, 18 straight matches now he's played. You don't fluke that. You don't fluke that. That's because he's consistent and he's playing at the best level week in, week out for his team here, NYCFC, and then when he goes to camp as well, he's proven it in camp. Because this is still MLS. He's, within the team, within Peru, there would be players playing in the top leagues in Europe. So it's not just proving himself on a match day with NYCFC, it's then going into camp as well and proving to the manager as well that he is worthy of it.
And Peru has a playoff game. So you heard Tinnerholm at the end of the, saying he hopes he gets a chance to play in the World Cup with Peru. They've got a playoff game on June 13 in Qatar against the winner of Australia, United Arab Emirates. And I don't know when that match is. It's just earlier in June, I think, and then they play this.
Yeah, I think it's the week before. I think so. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the 5th or 6th, something like that. Is my assumption.
Yep. And just if you're curious, MLS teammates on Peru for Collins, Pedro Gallese, the goalkeeper for Orlando, Edison Flores, who we just saw with DC United on Wednesday, Marcos Lopez from the Earthquakes, and Raul Ruidiaz is not on the roster for this June window for Peru, which for Peru and the Peruvians, and they're anxiously awaiting that match. Well, that's going to do it for us here as we prepare for our pregame on the New York City FC network. You do see the starting lineup here, and a couple of changes, some interesting notes. Keaton Parks, he's on the bench, and Tylis Magno is on the bench. And Chris Gloucester is on the bench. So Amundsen returning from injury, and he'll start at left back. And it's Maxi Morales who will play the twin 6 with Alfredo Morales. So I'm going to have to be using full names in the commentary because it's going to be Morales and Morales, passing to get out of jams with each other. But Maxi played the 6 against San Jose, and San Jose, and then now it's. He's being used in that similar capacity today with Parks getting a well-deserved rest. Remember, he was coming off surgery, so he's just getting a rest, folks.
Look, Parks is a huge loss, but Maxi Morales, we know he can do that, but I think it puts a lot more pressure on Alfredo Morales to sit and hold, and Maxi will have the license to roam around. I don't think they'll quite be dual 6s. Maxi will have more of a license to roam, that's for certain. He's not going to be winning many headers, obviously. He's not going to be winning that many tackles. That's going to be down to Alfredo Morales to win those knockdowns, to win the 50-50 tackles, then give the ball off to Maxi Morales, the more technically gifted member of that duo 6 as well. I think Maxi Morales, Acevedo and Eber are the 3 crucial players. And all 3 of those need to play well today for it to go well for NYCFC as a whole.
Well, we did have a briefing, Matty and I, with Ronnie Dyla prior to coming up for pregame live here with you on this StreamYard stream. And in regard to Eber, who's starting in place of Castellanos, the suspended Castellanos, this is a huge match.
Yeah.
And he is someone that is going to have to start producing in order to have an opportunity not only to contribute more and play more, but with the inevitable departure of Castellanos, Ronnie Dyla has to configure something unless a player comes in through the transfer window. So this is a big match for Eber.
Absolutely. And Eber knows himself. You always know as a player, you know how well you're performing. I do think that he's still a little bit tentative. I don't think he's completely comfortable with that injury. I don't think he's mentally over that barrier, over that hurdle yet. I think it shows. But what he does know, Eber knows, if he wants his career to go on much longer at NYCFC, he needs to start performing. And that doesn't have to be today. but it would certainly help if it was today. And then it needs to be going forward as well, because we haven't seen him performing anywhere near to the level he was. He's a 5 out of 10 right now compared to when he was a 9 out of 10, 8, 9 out of 10 previous to that knee injury. And look, I do understand how serious the injury was, and I do understand that psychologically it's very difficult to get over those injuries, but he has to if he wants his career to go forward.
Only 1 goal since September the 2nd, 2020. Obviously, the ACL tear and recovery, a huge part of the absence. But ever, at the age of 30, the bright light in the clubhouse. But this is a big one for him today as New York City plays host to the Chicago Fire, who have never beaten New York City in 8 games in this series on the road. Well, the Fire are on the road. We're at Citi Field, Flushing, Queens. For Matty Lawrence, and I'm Glenn Crooks. Thanks also to Tony Miola. And be sure to tune in. We got Ronnie Dialek coming up at 4:45. That's the NYCFC Network, nycfc.com/radio. Enjoy the game, everybody.